One of the questions I got this morning, coming in here, was what's it like to work for the world's largest cannabis company? And my answer to them is when you get to work with weed every day, it's a pretty good time. So when Joe asked me earlier on, probably about 2-3 months ago, to come in and do this discussion and talk with you guys, we talked about the separation of church and state between medical and recreational cannabis, because Canopy Growth is really the world's largest vertically integrated cannabis company. On the left-hand side of your screen, you see Spectrum Medical Cannabis, which will become the world's first global brand of medical cannabis, and that's really our charge, is to take the Spectrum brand globally. But on top of that, we are also the world's largest licensed producer of cannabis. Currently in Canada, we've got somewhere around 6 million square feet of federally regulated growing space. We continue to build out production platforms across the world. In Denmark, parts of Europe, we're looking at building a significant piece of infrastructure in Lesotho, and as well as in Latin America as well. But beyond Spectrum, we do have a fairly sophisticated organization with a number of adult recreational use brands, for example, Tweed, Burt, Doja, and then we have partner brands like DNA Genetics, leased by Snoop, so yeah, we get to hang out with Snoop Dogg once in a while, so that's kind of fun. And lastly, we have a fairly robust retail platform that we're currently building out under our Tweed Main Street banner, as well as a recent acquisition with Tokyo Smoke. So a fairly large organization. In terms of growth, I just hired an individual recently from J&J. He showed up at training last week, or yesterday, and we're talking about employee numbers. I started about 8 months ago. I was employee 625, I think, and he's now well into employee 3,000. So we currently have about 1,000 job openings, so our company is growing rather rapidly, as you can imagine. Talking about the separation of church and state, really there is in a lot of ways a very profound separation of church and state around the world. Canada, along with Uruguay, are really the only two countries that have federally regulated both recreational and medical cannabis. But the important part of this slide here is that medical cannabis is federally legalized in a growing number of countries in the world. In fact, probably by the time you get to this time next year, most of Western Europe will have a regulatory framework for medical cannabis, and most of Latin America, as you can see, is sort of highlighted there in brown, will continue to follow suit. Obviously, the big question is what's going to happen in the United States. No one is quite sure of that. Depending on what happens probably in the upcoming midterm elections, I think that will really determine where things go. But the important part of this slide is that really recreational cannabis is really only a Canadian phenomenon. It's estimated that the medical side of the business alone is probably north of $150 billion globally. For the foreseeable future, recreational cannabis is really not likely to have a predominant role in most of the Western democracies as well as in Latin America. And we see that in terms of the regulatory frameworks that are being put forth by these governments. So our starting position as an organization is that cannabis is already deeply entrenched in society, and to say that it's not is really turning a blind eye to the topic. And our going-in position is that really from a cannabis perspective, a legal framework benefits all of society. Currently, or prior to last week, if you wanted to get cannabis outside the medical stream, you went and you talked to a guy at the street corner in a puffy coat. He'd pull out a bag of weed, hand it to you, and you had no idea what you were getting. It could be, we heard earlier about the opioid crisis and the opioid phenomena. The tremendous amount of cannabis has been spiked with fentanyl. We know that is an issue not only in Canada, but also the United States. So individuals are buying cannabis and they're not sure what they're getting. So we believe that product safety is, whether you're in your recreational stream or whether you're in the medical stream, that product safety is first and foremost our greatest responsibility, and that's why all of our facilities are fully GMP certified. If you show up to Smiths Falls and you have a tour of our facility, it's literally like walking through a pharmaceutical plant. We believe in very clearly defined age restrictions, but more importantly, we also believe that by regulating cannabis, we bring to an end a tremendous amount of the illicit illicit activity that currently exists, not just in the Canadian marketplace, but globally as well. And then there are some significant and profound economic advantages to a regulated stream. I mentioned earlier the employment that we've seen within Canopy Growth. The ability to actually transform a community. When we look at Smiths Falls, I'll use that as an example. About 11 years ago, the Hershey Corporation pulled out of Smiths Falls, leaving about 600 people out of work. And we acquired the Hershey plant about 4 years ago. We do now know why the Oompa Loompas were so happy moving into a chocolate factory. But looking at what the economic benefits and what it has meant to the town of Smiths Falls has been profound. We currently employ almost 1,000 people there. Back in the spring, there were literally 750 highly paid construction workers putting on a 400,000 square foot addition to our facility there. So the economic advantages of legalization are dramatic, and we believe that we can actually take that knowledge and take that expertise and move it into not just the Canadian market, but also looking at what we're doing in impoverished countries like Lesotho, where we've signed an agreement with a local tribe to begin cannabis manufacture and production for the South African market. And we believe that that will have a truly transformative impact on that community. So corporate culture-wise, we really believe that we can really change lives for the positive. So we've clearly defined that there is no distinction between rec and medical in terms of how we're approaching it as an organization. But we believe that as a company, we need to make sure that we stay focused, because we're here at a healthcare meeting today. We need to stay focused on the patient. And as Kim pointed out earlier, the CMA has come out with some fairly defined positions on whether to have a medical and a recreational stream. We believe in continuing to have a very productive dialogue with the CMA to try and change those beliefs and attitudes. And a lot of that really does come from a stigma perspective. And looking at my own personal journey coming to Canopy Growth, I walked into this position feeling very much in favor of the medical stream, having family members who have used medical cannabis in the past. I've seen the tremendous value and benefit that it brings, but quite honestly, I was somewhat ambivalent over the recreational stream, and I wasn't quite sure how that fit in. But with education and with time, I've come to realize that a lot of the myths and behaviors are really, and attitudes towards cannabis are really rooted in cultural stigma. And I think if we can tear down those stigmas culturally, we can have a transformative effect and impact on society. So we believe that there really does need to be two streams. Obviously, the recreational stream is interesting. I was in Winnipeg this week, got a chance to go into one of our Tweed stores, and also got a chance to speak to a number of physicians who prescribe medical cannabis. And my observation walking out of the Tweed store and after talking with the staff was fully 1/3 of individuals walking into that Tweed store in Winnipeg, they were looking for something medicinal. And our staff cannot give them that advice. Our staff has been educated to tell individuals who are coming in looking for medical relief to go talk to their physician. And that's the way that it should be. And that's the way, and that's the reason why we do need to have two very, very distinct streams of cannabis use. One on the medical side that is controlled by physicians, and then obviously on the recreational side, let people make their own decisions with regards to that. So the trend in the cannabis marketplace is clearly for therapeutic products. This comes from Health Canada's market data. And what we're seeing, and this was really echoed out in my visit to Winnipeg earlier this week, is that the trend is really for therapeutic products. Dried flower or bud is becoming less and less important on the medical side, and we're seeing a tremendous adoption of oils and soft gels is really the primary product that healthcare providers are choosing, because that's really what they're most familiar with. And we really do discourage smoking and making sure that if we are making a product recommendation, it's really geared towards oils and soft gels. So answering a lot of the scientific questions, it was great to hear Kim's comments and Emblem's commitment to research. And we believe that a lot of big scientific questions that have not been answered will get answered through a regulatory framework, through legalization, because up until this point in time, for individuals or researchers to actually do research on cannabis, it was considered illicit and illegal. So the ability to actually do those randomized phase 3 double-blind placebo-controlled trials was virtually non-existent. So with legalization and with the regulatory framework, our sister companies, Canopy Health Innovations, which is based here in Canada, and the Beckley Canopy Therapeutics Foundation that's based in the United Kingdom, we have a very, very active, in fact, this slide is now out of date, but we have a very, very active research program, primarily focused on the medical side, but also looking at answering some of the critical scientific questions in relation to not only recreational use, but also as we move forward looking at veterinary and animal health. So to sum it up, we believe that patients need doctors. We believe that that is the most appropriate mechanism for which healthcare consumers should be acquiring medical cannabis. We don't see this as a Trojan horse to open the floodgates for cannabis use. We see it as very much a medicinal product worthy of use and also worthy of further research. So in summary, cannabis is already being used to treat various medical conditions. HCPs, they really need to own that patient care relationship, and the whole patient must be managed. And the best way to do that is through a regulated environment with two very, very distinct and separate streams. And I thank you for your time and attention.